I've got a fun project for you today that combines different types of media. You're going to be using some paper, you're going to be using some fabric, you're going to do some applique, you're going to do some free motion quilting. So if you want a quick fun project, make sure you watch the video. Hi, I'm Kim Jamison Hurst. I'm an online educator and the host of The Quilter's Way, the only online quilting membership that combines learning and socializing. Before we get to today's video, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. So this is what we're going to be making today. You're going to be using some paper as a background, you're going to be using some fabric, and probably some other embellishments as well. Now, don't worry, I'm going to put all the items you need in the description below so you'll be able to gather them all together before you start this project. So there's a few things you're going to need for this project. Now remember, it's totally improvisational, so have fun with it, okay? Don't stress too much about it. You're going to need some fabric scraps, and you'll need to think of what design you're going to want to put onto your background. I'm going to talk about the background in just a second. So depending on what you want to do, just cut out some pieces of fabric. Not a big deal. Maybe make a flower. That's what I'm going to work with. So I got some scraps to use for flower. I've got some scraps I can use for leaves, fabric scraps. Next thing you need is a background. Now this is where the fun comes in. I like to use dictionary pages or encyclopedia pages. So if you are able to get your hands on some old encyclopedias or dictionaries, usually libraries are getting rid of them. They're not able to use them very much anymore, so you can probably score some. And if you get a dictionary, there's tons of pages in there. You're going to make more, you'll have more background than projects. The other thing you might want to do is I had this come out of my printer at work. It was having some issues, and this came out, so this would also make a really great background. So I've got a whole bunch of those sheets I can use. You're going to need some glue, so I've got lapel stick here. You can use any kind of glue stick, and that is just to hold these applique pieces down, because that's what you're going to be creating when you cut out those shapes from your scraps, is applique pieces. You may want to have some additional optional things. So these are little buttons, different kinds of buttons. So you might want to dress up your project at the end with buttons. And you may want to dress up your project at the end with some trim around the edges, or even in the project, inside the project itself. So rickrack might be fun, or if you've got lace trim, you might want to add that to your project. And if you do want to add buttons or lace trim, you need to have some glue that's going to have it stick on permanently. So I like to use some of these products by Aleene's. There's Julep, which is embellishing glue that'll work to put your buttons on, or any other kind of three-dimensional embellishments you want to put on. And the Fabric Fusion is permanent dry cleanable fabric adhesive. In other words, if you want to use rickrack or lace trim, this will work and keep it on there permanently. The other thing you might want to use is you might want to add a bit of color on the background paper afterwards. So I have these watercolor pencils that work nice. They're quite soft, or gelatos are fun to use too. And you can actually put these on and smear them in a little bit. They're lots of fun to use. So I have those. You don't have to use the buttons or trim or any crayons or markers of any kind if you don't want to. But hey, if you want to have some fun with them, why not? Okay, so next thing you want to do, oh, and by the way, I'll put a list of all the things you need in the description below, so check that out so you've got all your items you need before you start this project all assembled. Next thing you want to do is you want to cut out some shapes from your fabric scrap. So in my case, I'm going to be cutting out a flower and some leaves to use. So do that first, and then meet me at your sewing machine. We're going to do some appliquing. We're going to do some free motion quilting as well. So I've got my background here, and I want to put on the fabric shapes that I've cut out. So I've got a flower, and I've got a couple of leaves here. And I also have this other little just rectangle of fabric. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But first, what you want to do is you want to take your applique pieces that you've got and arrange them on your background. So depending on where you want them, one thing you want to keep them away from the edge a bit. You don't want to get too close to your edge. Think of it as a seam allowance. Okay, so I'm going to put my flower. I like to put things kind of off a bit though. I like to be off center. That's just me. I'm a little off. Okay, how about that? And then we've got this other little leaf. I'm going to stick it like that. So you want to play around with your design until you're happy with it. Don't overthink it. And then this little guy is going to go at the bottom, because what I like to do with this is I like to put a little word on here, an inspirational word. And so I'm going to do that when I free motion quilt. Not as hard as you think. Okay, so when I've got this on and I like it, I'm going to want to glue it down. But I also want to decide what free motion quilting I'm going to do on it. So I've just got a friction pen here. You can use a pencil, whatever kind of marker you want, but probably something that will come off or that you won't see too much, because you're going to stitch over, but it's just a straight stitch you're going to do. So with this one, I know I can put a little bit of heat on afterwards and it'll come off. I don't want to burn my paper. Okay, but I want to do some free motion quilting. So I want to fill in some of this area here. Now I'm not talking about a lot of free motion quilting. I'm talking about adding some little, let's say, maybe a little tendril up here and maybe another one down in that area, something like that, a little swirl. And I'm also going to do some stitching on my flower and on my leaves. Now, I don't need to mark that. I'm just going to probably go around a swirl in here. I'm just going to put some veins in the leaves, so I don't need to mark that. But maybe I want to come down here and maybe I want to make another leaf out of the free motion quilting. Maybe put a few little swirls on that as well, something like that. And I'll probably go in and add some little veins on it too. So we'll do something like that. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just play around with it. You're supposed to be having fun here, okay? And as I said, I'm going to put this one down near the bottom. I'm not going to write on it or anything. I'm going to decide on what word I want to put on later when I'm actually free motion quilting. So the reason I didn't glue these down first is I want to make sure I can move them around until I'm happy with them. I also want to make sure I've added my free motion quilting lines, or where the free motion quilting is going to be, before I do anything. Now I'm going to peel this back, and you don't need to put a lot of glue on. I just want to keep this on here because I'm actually going to be stitching on it, as I said. Move back on the other side. I'm not pressing this down a lot yet because really I should start with the leaves, shouldn't I? So let's go back to my leaves here. Let's pick them up. They're already sticking to the flower a bit. You're probably better at this than I am, I betcha. Okay, I got one more little leaf to just stick down. So all you're doing is just getting these to stick to the background fabric enough that you can get them to the machine and sew them down. Just gonna put a little bit more on here. And you don't need a lot of glue on here because it's going on paper. Like, you don't need much glue to glue anything to paper. Let me take this little guy over and we're gonna put him down again as well. There we go. So here we go. There's my little guy, our little design. He's ready to go, and so now I can go and do some free motion quilting in the sewing machine. And I'm going to use a contrasting thread here. You can use whatever color thread you want. A black or a dark brown might be nice. I'm going to use a turquoise just so you'll see it well. Okay, let's go to the machine and do some free motion quilting. So I'm at my machine and I'm going to do some free motion quilting. I've got on my PDH foot on my Janome MC 9450. That's my open toe darning foot. I have got my, I hope, feed dogs dropped. That's always something you want to double check. Yes, they're dropped. Okay. And I want to go into my free motion area. So I want to get my machine all set up. You'll notice I don't have a slider or anything underneath. Because I'm working with the paper, it slips around really easily. I don't need anything underneath. I don't have any gloves on. The paper moves along really easy. I don't find that I need those, but if you want to, you could put a slider underneath. You could use your gloves. If you don't know how to set up your machine for free motion quilting, check in the description below because I'll put a link to my video showing you how to do that. All right, let me just get my machine completely set up here. So what I want to do first is I want to actually do the background. So I'm just going to peel back a little bit of my applique before I start here. And the other thing that I need for me is my glasses. So let me just get those and I'll be right back. All right, that's better. Now I can actually see what I'm doing. I really like the light on this Janome because I can move it around and see things perfectly. Okay. Okay, let's see how I do now. If you aren't stitching exactly on those drawn lines, don't worry about it. They're just a suggestion. Remember, those lines are going to come off later on anyway, so not to worry. Okay, so here's my first one that I've got stitched. You can see I went off the lines a bit, but that's okay. So I'm going to continue on. I'm going to finish the rest of my free motion stitching on the background. Then I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I'm working on the applique pieces. So now I've done my free motion quilting on the background and on the leaves, and I'm just going to do a swirl on the flower to finish it off. This part of it anyway. Just adjust my speed a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to cut off these tails here. Now, I've got most of that done. Now I just need to add some something down here, some word or something down here. So let's see, what can I put on there? I have to think about this a little bit, right? Because I'm writing, but I'm writing with my needle. So all right, hopefully you can read that. It's almost like stitching backwards and you're doing a lot of, or writing backwards, I say, and you're doing a lot of backtracking as well. Okay, so the next thing I need to do here is I want to get rid of these lines that I had put down. Now, I used a friction pen for that, so I can probably just erase because it's on paper. So I'm going to do that and show you what it looks like. Okay, guess what? You don't want to try and erase friction pen using the friction pen sort of eraser on the other end because I actually tore my fabric a little bit. So I'm going to use some heat to take that off. I'll just heat my iron up a little bit, go over it, and that'll take it right off. So I'll do that and come back and show you. Okay, so I used a very low iron setting and I went over the friction pen marks and they came off right away. So note to self, don't rub on thin paper. Okay, so anyway, now I want to add some color with these gelatos. So I'm going to be really careful because I don't want to rip through the paper with these. These are soft, they're like a pastel. So I'm just going to put a little bit of color on here. And then you can rub them in if you want. So I don't want to do a lot of this on here because I've already damaged this particular area. But I want some green in there, so. Yes, I am stubborn. So I'll put a little bit in. But if I wanted to go up into this area, let's say, and I could just kind of go along and kind of mimic the swirl I did, I could do that. Give a little bit of extra interest in there. Truth is, I just want to play with the gelatos. They're so much fun. Okay, so let me just go up a little bit there. And like I said, you can kind of smooth them in a little bit. That lightens them up, softens the look of them. Just kind of fun to do that. You don't have to do that, of course. If you don't want to add any extra colors, don't have to do that. If you want to add more free motion quilting, you can certainly do that to it. Okay, so the other thing I have on here is I've got a little button. So if I want, this is actually the back side of this button, but it looks so much better this way, doesn't it? So much cuter. So I can use a permanent adhesive, one of the Aleene's products I was talking about earlier, to put that on there if I wanted to do that. And again, if I want to add any rickrack or trim around here, I can. Now, the next thing you could do with this, you're going to wonder what are you going to do with this, is you can get a frame. So just get, you know, a small frame and put it in the frame. You can give this to one of your friends as a gift, one of your quilting friends, look cute in their studio, or why not put it up in your own studio? If you wanted to, you could just put it on cardstock. Cut out some cardstock, just a little bit bigger, glue it down to the cardstock, and you could prop it up in your studio. It would look really cute, I think. So by doing this project, you're doing a little bit of applique, you're doing a little bit of free motion quilting, you get to play around with maybe some other kinds of coloring pencils or pastels if you'd like, and it's just kind of a fun little project to do. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and be sure to share it with your quilting friends. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video.